What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to be doing an entire video just focused on the state of Michigan. Michigan was a state that no one thought that Donald Trump could win in 2016, but he did, and it was essential on his path to get past 270 votes. If we remember back in 2016, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania were kind of three of these states that were considered to be part of Hillary Clinton's blue wall that Donald Trump broke through to win. He had to win at least one of these states, and he won all three. And going into 2020, Trump is kind of in a similar scenario. In fact, out of the Rust Belt, I thought that Trump's chances in Michigan were he had the worst chance in the state of Michigan compared to Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. But on Friday, we got a new, fresh set of polls that if you haven't been living under a rock, I'm sure you've heard of if you're interested in politics at all. So today is Sunday, and the last polls that we've seen just come out on Real Clear Politics, they have the latest polls tabs, were from the state of Michigan, from the Trafalgar Group, which was actually one of the most accurate pollsters in 2016. It kind of uncovered maybe the kind of the hidden Trump voter that a lot of traditional pollsters ignored. And we see that right now, August 28th, I mean, we're about 60 days from the election. Trump is up in Michigan by 2 points, and John James, the Senate candidate, is ahead by 1 point. And if we remember back in 2016, and honestly, in the 2018 midterms, they predicted pretty well that the incumbent Democratic senator would beat John James. But right now, they're projecting that John James is going to unseat the Democratic incumbent, and that Donald Trump is going to win. So I'm sure you saw a lot of news from it, but let me kind of break down the history of Michigan. So earlier this year, the Trump campaign halted buying new ads in Michigan, which at the time I said from the Trump campaign perspective, I think this is smart because if we look at the electoral map, Trump does not need Michigan. He can win simply if he wins North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, and Wisconsin. I think that has his easiest path to 270. And if all these states do go for Joe Biden, then I mean that's a very, very narrow path. So presumably Trump will probably want to like buy ads in like all of these Rust Belt states just so that his path isn't as narrow. But even looking at like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, I thought that Michigan was the least favorable state. And that is kind of backed up by a couple of factors. Looking at the polls, Trump has performed worst in the state of Michigan before the most recent poll compared to the other states. And because Michigan has the smallest white population out of the Rust Belt. Michigan has a lot of kind of big urban areas such as Flint and Detroit. And in 2016, the black vote in terms of percentages was down a lot, and I don't expect it to be that way in 2020. I think that if we just look at the 2020 primaries, it appears that African Americans are a lot more excited to vote about Joe Biden, and there's been several polls done that show this too. So that was part of the reason why I thought that 2020 was more out of, or that Michigan was more out of reach for Donald Trump in 2020 than in 2016. I think it was a little bit more of a fluke. And in the 2018 midterms, Gretchen Whitmer won by I think like 8 or 9 or 10 points in the 2018 midterms, while Scott Walker only lost by 1.5 points in the 2018 midterms. That was considered a Democratic wave year. So that is why I thought that like Michigan was going to be to the left of states like Wisconsin and and Pennsylvania does have a lot more rural regions than Michigan. They don't have quite as many kind of like these urban areas that traditionally vote for Democrats. So those were part of the reasons. And if we look at the snake, um, the winding path to victory that is done by 538, we can see that Michigan is even behind Nevada, New Hampshire, and Minnesota, which was actually, frankly, pretty surprising to me. If we look at Michigan right now, we see that Biden is favored and he wins in 79% of these scenarios. And we see that it has gone up recently from about 16% to 21% on Trump's side, probably because they just included the poll that had Trump up by 2 points. But one thing that's also pretty interesting, if we look at where it was on election day in 2016, it is literally the exact same spot as it was. So could it be a repeat of 2016? If we look at the polls right before the election, the same group that I'm talking about now, the Trafalgar group, they had Trump up by 2 points, and it was the only poll. I mean, there was a slew of polls done before the election. None of them, even if we go as far back as like like from 2015, none of them had Trump up, but the last election before, or the last poll before the election by the Trafalgar group predicted that Trump would win by 2 points, and obviously he didn't win by 2 points, but it was the only poll that predicted that he would even come close. I mean, these other polls that have Clinton +5, Clinton +6. I mean, there weren't any, like, even any polls that had Clinton +1 or +2 or +3, because, and this demonstrates that the polls are just completely off on the state level, especially in these Rust Belt states. So, could it be a repeat? And if we look at the 2018 midterms, so John James definitely lost, but one thing that I want to emphasize is that the Trafalgar group, it isn't just like a completely totally biased right-leaning news source or polling group. I mean, they had Debbie Stabenow up by 9 points, and John James actually outperformed this poll and outperformed the Real Clear Politics average. But this just kind of goes to show that like this group aren't just full of kind of partisan polling hacks. So one thing that I do want to close on is that this poll is definitely an outlier of kind of all of the polls that we've seen. We've seen some polls that have Biden up double digits, but I think just looking generally, let's see if I have one right now. We can see that Trump's position has improved just in the past 2 months, and we've seen this across the board, but especially in a state like Michigan. I think at his peak, Biden was up in the adjusted polling average at 538 does by 10.7 points, and we can see that right now it is at 7.1. And kind of pre-coronavirus free Black Lives Matter protests, we can see that Trump was within 2.2 points. So hopefully we'll get some more polling out from the state of Michigan, so I can more accurately kind of determine like how competitive it is. But I think that some people on the Trump campaign are going to be looking at these polls and saying, "Hey, look, Michigan does have 16 electoral votes, and it could be one of the paths that Donald Trump has right now. If I think that Donald Trump were to win Michigan, I think that he would win the election. I mean, I don't really see very many paths where Donald Trump would win Michigan and lose a state like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. That just doesn't make sense to me. And if he wins the Rust Belt, and he's probably going to win North Carolina, and I mean, potentially Biden could just kind of run the show and win these 4 states too. But I mean, I think that if Trump were to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, then he would probably pick up like an Arizona or Minnesota. I mean, really, all he would have to do is win New Hampshire at this point and win. So if Trump wins Michigan, he has a lot more paths to 270 than Biden does, in my opinion. So that is my special of Michigan. I kind of want to close on that. I still definitely do think that Biden has an advantage, but I want to look closely at the polls, and if other polls that even were more biased towards Clinton in 2016, if they show that this race is kind of closing in and getting closer, even if Biden's up by like 4 or 5 points, then I think I could move this kind of towards the pure toss up, or even towards the tilt Trump determination. So I really hope that y'all like this video, and please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks, guys.